The shrill ring of the phone sliced through the silence of her apartment. Sarah jolted awake, heart pounding. 2:13 a.m., the clock glared. Who could be calling at this hour? She fumbled for her phone, a sense of unease creeping in. The name on the screen made her blood run cold. "Michael?" she whispered, her voice trembling. It couldn't be. Michael, her brother, was gone. A tragic accident, they said. A drunk driver, a mangled car, no survivors. She had just come from his funeral that afternoon. Hesitantly, she answered, "Hello?" The line crackled with static, then a voice, faint but familiar, whispered her name. "Sarah, help me." A wave of dizziness washed over Sarah. It couldn't be him. It simply couldn't. Michael's voice, weak and strained, seemed to come from a vast distance. "Michael? Is that really you?" she choked out, clutching the phone as if it were a lifeline. The voice on the other end grew more urgent. "Sarah, listen. It wasn't an accident. They're lying." The line went dead. Sarah sat there, phone pressed to her ear, the silence deafening. Her mind raced, a whirlwind of confusion and disbelief. Had she really just spoken to her dead brother? Michael and Sarah had always been close. Growing up, they shared a bond that went beyond the usual sibling camaraderie. They confided in each other, relied on each other, understood each other like no one else could. Sarah remembered how Michael, always the protective older brother, would often tease her about her overactive imagination, her penchant for the supernatural. "Don't worry, sis," he'd say with a grin. "If anyone ever tries to hurt you, my ghost will come back and haunt them." She had laughed then, but now, the memory sent chills down her spine. Could Michael's words be more than just a childhood joke? The news of Michael's death had been a devastating blow. He had been driving home from work late one night when his car collided head-on with another vehicle. The police report was straightforward. A case of drunk driving, the other driver at fault. Sarah had accepted their explanation, numb with grief. But now, Michael's chilling phone call had planted a seed of doubt in her mind. Sarah couldn't shake off the feeling that something was amiss. It was a gnawing sensation, a whisper in the back of her mind that refused to be silenced. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Michael's face, heard his voice, and felt the weight of unanswered questions pressing down on her. Michael's words, "It wasn't an accident, they're lying," echoed in her mind. Those words haunted her, replaying over and over, each time with more intensity. She couldn't dismiss them as mere paranoia or grief-stricken delusions. She thought back to the funeral, the hushed whispers, the strange looks on the faces of some of Michael's friends. It was as if they were hiding something, a secret that they were too afraid to reveal. The atmosphere had been thick with tension, and Sarah had felt like an outsider in her own grief. Had they known something she didn't? The question gnawed at her, refusing to let go. She replayed every conversation, every glance, every awkward silence, searching for clues that might have slipped past her in her initial shock and sorrow. Was there more to Michael's death than met the eye? The official reports had been clear, but Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that they were missing something crucial. She began to scrutinize every detail, every piece of evidence, looking for inconsistencies or hidden truths. Driven by a mix of grief and a growing sense of suspicion, Sarah decided to investigate. She knew it wouldn't be easy, but she couldn't rest until she had answers. Her love for Michael and her need for closure fueled her determination. She started by revisiting the details of the accident. Every report, every witness statement, every piece of evidence was meticulously examined. She spent countless hours poring over documents, looking for anything that might have been overlooked. She requested a copy of the police report, hoping it would provide some clarity. The officers had been thorough, but Sarah couldn't help but feel that there was something they had missed, something that might explain the nagging doubts that plagued her. She contacted Michael's friends and colleagues, probing them for information. Some were cooperative, others evasive. Each conversation left her with more questions than answers, but she pressed on, determined to uncover the truth. She even visited the site of the crash, hoping that being there might trigger a revelation. The twisted metal and shattered glass were a stark reminder of the tragedy, but they offered no new insights. Still, Sarah felt a connection to the place, a sense that it held the key to understanding what had happened. Every lead she followed seemed to hit a dead end, leaving her more frustrated and desperate. The more she searched, the more elusive the truth became. It was as if the answers were just out of reach, taunting her with their proximity. Yet the more she dug, the more convinced she became that something wasn't right. There were too many coincidences, too many unanswered questions. Sarah knew she was on the brink of a breakthrough, and she wouldn't stop until she uncovered the truth, no matter where it led her. Days turned into weeks, and Sarah's obsession with uncovering the truth about Michael's death grew stronger. She found herself consumed by the mystery, unable to focus on anything else. Her friends and family grew concerned, but Sarah couldn't let it go. She needed answers, and she was determined to find them, no matter the cost. She barely slept, haunted by the sound of his voice on the phone that night. The memory of his last words echoed in her mind, a constant reminder of the unresolved questions. Every time she closed her eyes, she could hear his voice, filled with an urgency that she couldn't quite understand. It was as if he was trying to tell her something important, something she had missed. She replayed their last conversation over and over in her mind, searching for clues, for any indication of what he might have known. She analyzed every word, every pause, hoping to uncover a hidden message. But no matter how many times she listened, the answers remained elusive. It was like trying to piece together a puzzle with missing pieces. One evening, while going through Michael's belongings, she stumbled upon an old journal. It was tucked away in a box of his personal items, almost as if it was meant to be found. Her heart raced as she opened it, hoping it would provide the answers she so desperately sought. The pages were filled with his thoughts, dreams, and fears. It was a window into his soul, a glimpse of the man she loved. As she read through the entries, she felt a mix of emotions, love, sadness, and a growing sense of dread. What had he been going through in those final days? As she flipped through the brittle pages, her eyes fell upon a chilling entry dated a few weeks before his death. The words seemed to leap off the page, sending a shiver down her spine. It was a side of Michael she had never seen before, a glimpse into a world of fear and paranoia. "I think I'm being followed," Michael had written. "Someone is watching me." The entry was brief, but it spoke volumes. It was clear that Michael had been living in fear, but of what, or whom, Sarah couldn't be sure. She felt a surge of protectiveness and a renewed determination to uncover the truth. "I don't know who it is, but I can feel their eyes on me everywhere I go." The words haunted her, painting a vivid picture of Michael's final days. She could almost see him, glancing over his shoulder, feeling the weight of unseen eyes. It was a terrifying thought, and it only fueled her resolve to find out what had really happened to him. Sarah's heart pounded in her chest. The anxiety was almost unbearable, a gnawing feeling that something was terribly wrong. She had always been close to her brother Michael, and the thought of him being in danger was more than she could handle. Her mind raced with questions and fears, each one more terrifying than the last. Could this be what Michael was trying to tell her? Was he in danger? The note she found was cryptic, filled with half-finished sentences and frantic scribbles. It was clear that Michael had been in a state of panic when he wrote it. Sarah's hands trembled as she held the note, her eyes scanning the words over and over, hoping to find some hidden meaning or clue, and if so, who wanted to harm him? The thought of someone lurking in the shadows, waiting to strike, sent chills down her spine. She couldn't shake the image of a shadowy figure, always just out of sight, watching and waiting. The fear was almost paralyzing, but she knew she had to push through it. Michael needed her. Desperate for answers, Sarah decided to retrace Michael's steps in the days leading up to his death. She visited his workplace, spoke to his neighbors, and even went through his old documents. Each visit brought more questions than answers. His co-workers mentioned he had been acting strange, paranoid even. His neighbors recalled seeing unfamiliar faces around his apartment, and even contacted the mysterious number that had called her on the night of his death. The number was disconnected, but the voice of the operator sounded strangely familiar. It was a small detail, but it gnawed at her. Why did that voice sound so familiar? She replayed the call in her mind, trying to place where she had heard it before. But the voice of the operator sounded strangely familiar. It was a woman's voice, soft and soothing, yet with an underlying current of something cold and menacing. The contrast was unsettling, and it made Sarah's skin crawl. She couldn't shake the feeling that this voice held the key to understanding what had happened to Michael. It was a woman's voice, soft and soothing, yet with an underlying current of something cold and menacing. The more she thought about it, the more convinced she became that this voice was connected to Michael's fate. But how? And why? The questions swirled in her mind, each one more urgent than the last, yet with an underlying current of something cold and menacing. Sarah couldn't shake off the feeling that she had heard that voice before, but she couldn't quite place it. It was like a puzzle with a missing piece, tantalizingly close yet just out of reach. She knew she had to keep digging to find that missing piece and put the puzzle together. Sarah couldn't shake off the feeling that she had heard that voice before, but she couldn't quite place it. She spent hours going through old memories, trying to find a match. Every time she thought she was close, the memory would slip away, like sand through her fingers. It was frustrating, but she refused to give up, but she couldn't quite place it. Determined, she continued her search, looking through old photos and documents, hoping to find a clue. She knew that somewhere, buried in the past, was the answer she was looking for, and she was determined to find it no matter how long it took. As Sarah delved deeper into her investigation, she encountered a wall of silence. People who were once eager to share their memories of Michael now seemed reluctant to talk, their faces etched with fear. It was as if they knew something they were afraid to reveal. The more Sarah learned, the more she realized that she was caught in a web of secrets, lies, and half-truths. The police, initially dismissive of her suspicions, now seemed to be taking her more seriously. They reopened the investigation into Michael's death, but their efforts proved futile. The evidence was inconclusive, the witnesses unreliable, and the trail had gone cold. Years have passed since that chilling phone call, but Sarah has never given up hope of finding out what really happened to her brother. The memory of his voice pleading for help from beyond the grave continues to haunt her. She knows in her heart that Michael's death was no accident, and she is determined to bring his killer to justice. The truth, she believes, is out there, somewhere, waiting to be uncovered. And until she finds it, she will never truly be free from the ghosts of that fateful night.